conversations beyond the ordinary.
Welcome to Transpersonal Arts, passionate explorations beyond the ordinary. I am Dr. Lila Moore, one of the co-founders of this podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Dulerain and MaryRita McGuire. Here we engage in insightful conversations that delve into the vast landscape of transpersonal arts, where creativity in its deepest sense intersects with both personal and collective transformation. In today's episode, we are exploring the enigmatic character of the seeker. Perhaps we are drawn to this theme because, as explorer, we have a tendency to venture into the unknown. So we'll begin with a simple yet profound question, one that has no single answer and no singular way of approaching it. Each of us will share our perspective, knowing that seeking by its very nature is an open-ended journey. So let's start with MaryRita. Hi.
Hi.
We are very curious about your perception of the seeker. What does the term seeker mean to you?
That's a really good question. And one thing that just comes immediately to mind is this soul calling. It's this pursuit of something that can't be rationalized. It's going on a journey and searching for this wisdom, searching for this connection to divine or to something outside yourself. And I've always felt that kind of deep calling to search throughout my life, not content just being in your own back garden. It's that sense of like it being kind of this innate part of you. So to be a seeker is something that drives you, and it's not just externally either. I think there's like an internal seeker as well. So the seeker manifests for me both in like this wanting to go out into the world on adventures and find, parts of myself and find that curiosity and, quench that thirst. But at the same time, there's also always an internal seeking going on, which to me is this pursuit of wisdom and knowledge through, the courses that you choose to do, the books you choose to read. But really in the internal world, that sense of wanting to expand and understand, there's always this wanting to understand. So it's this constant pursuit of this wisdom. And I think as well, it's kind of, that if that's a part of you from a really early age. And, I grew up in a small council estate in North Wales. It's a square and, all of your neighbours. And yet from like the age of 6, 7, 8, there's always that sense of wanting to go out into the world. And my mum's always said that I would sit circling places on a map and just wanting to go to those places. And my childhood friend, when I was 16, she wrote a poem for me saying that, I can't imagine you will be here when you're older, you'll be abroad, you'll be living somewhere abroad and you'll be searching. And that's exactly what happened. I currently live in the Middle East. And so it's that sense of this deep journey of knowing and wanting to just get that next taste, that next part, which once you've consumed, what's next? It's almost like this never-ending curiosity. And I think one of my favorite books growing up was Alice in Wonderland, because there's that sense of just wanting to fly down the rabbit hole into this unknown, into these adventures, and then to kind of have a life like that just feels, that I'm satisfying the seeker within. So that's what it kind of means to me, is that real soul calling. It's indescribable on a rational level. And even words aren't enough sometimes. It's like, I feel like creatively I could probably express it differently, you know?
When you were talking, I was thinking about the difference between being a child and experiencing the seeker as a child and then growing up, because I think it's two different experiences. And this is also what I noticed as I grow up, is that when you're a child, you're not really aware of it. It's so natural to you being a seeker. And we don't have all this wisdom yet. And there's something very authentic and fresh in the seeking child, because the seeker always comes up as a wise old person. And suddenly we have a new archetype here, I think, that emerged, which is the seeker child, which is very interesting. And that's what I find very interesting, of the difference between being a child and seeking and being a grown-up and seeking.
Because I suppose as a child, it's like you said, it's so authentic. It's just a part of you. It's just the way you operate. Whereas, as an adult, you might be steering it more. You might be guiding that energy. But as a child, it's just a part of you. It's like that's why I feel like it's a soul calling. It comes from, being a child. I think of James Hillman's idea of being an acorn, that sense that you are born with the thing that's kind of part of your soul's calling. And also when you have siblings and they don't have that same seeker energy, when you think, I have one brother, he was always going to live at home, he was always going to kind of stay quite local, because his energy was all about being very present in his world. And, he works with the materials from the island he's from. It's beautiful. And so the difference of when you do have siblings and you think, why am I sat here, like in reflection, why was I sat there just circling maps and wanting to just always be outside the garden, somewhere else, always wanting to be somewhere else, even inwardly wanting to be somewhere else. And it was like we were talking in the previous podcast about being in solitude and kind of living in the imagination. And, that's a very seeking energy as well, is the imagination. It's like the expansion that you can have. So it's beautiful, I think.
Also, I think you mentioned that you wrote diaries as a child. I did as well. It really helps me in terms of journey that I made through life and see the connection between what guided me in early moments of childhood to now.
As a child, my seeker was explorer. I was going forward and doing things, just trying things. Like when I was 9, I had a dream of how I can do a performance. Just a dream with some fairy tales in very small details, what I can take from my home and what I can make as a set, whom I can invite. And next day I came to school and asked my classmates, do you want to make a performance? Let's try it. And it was like a start of the journey. And then it was absolutely not like in my dream, because so many people joined, so many people brought their imagination and fantasy, creativity. So it was much bigger and kind of like it was. And we had whole school coming for this performance. Suddenly it becomes I started as a game almost, but it became real. So for me, Seeker is also the zero tarot card fool, which is taking leap of the faith and going from the rock to the nowhere, to the abyss. And somehow he is finding his way. And it was always my way to do things. I was thinking, it's just impossible, but I need to try. And then when you're starting moving forward, first step, and universe sending to you some help, some signs, some people, some kind of like possibilities. So for me, Seeker is also active action. It's exploring and not being afraid. That's very important moment of the Seeker for me.
Yeah, I think what's very interesting about your story is the fact that the Seeker emerged as a performance when you was a child. And this is what MaryRita was mentioning James Hillman and these early seeds of childhood, when destiny is manifesting, it shows what the journey is going to be about. And the unknown of child can dare. Child is less afraid, in a way, to take risks. The idea of the fool that you brought into this conversation, it's the first time that I hear it discussed in relation to the seeker. And this is really a revelation. A fool is one who is courageous enough to take the risks. You know, there is this saying that young people are more adventurous than older people. This is kind of common, but there is something in it, because if you look back, you know, the type of risks I took, for example, when I was young, were really risky. MaryRita mentioned it in the previous episode, in school, or in unconventional things. I think the seeker could manifest at any age, and some people just couldn't manifest it before adulthood for so many reasons. So it would be very unfair to say that, well, it's only when you're young you can be the fool. But you mentioned it very much in relation to this early awakening to your vocation. So I felt that there was, in a way, an intuitive relationship between the seeker as a child and the fool, which is an amazing metaphor and archetype to associate with this idea of the seeker. For me, a seeker is about looking deeply within the inner world. It's always about searching for something meaningful, something that isn't immediately visible on the surface of the physical reality. Whether I might be seeking, and whatever I may seek, it often feels like the answer is hidden and out of reach. And there is a big difference between a quick search, like finding an answer to a question on Google or through AI, because the seeker quest requires depth, persistence, and sometimes struggle. It's as if the very act of seeking is where meaning unfolds. So it's at the actual seeking. The process itself is very transformative and meaningful. So it's not necessarily getting the answer, it's seeking for the answer, which makes the seeking meaningful and transformative. So it's the process, and the process is where you find your authenticity, because this is where authentic discovery happens. And this is something that you both said, that there is an inner seeker within us that is always seeking. It is beyond conscious awareness. Often it's that inner voice and an impulse or a feeling guiding us towards something deeper, because it is a search for depth. So it is obviously very internal process, and a lived experience is something that we engage with. So it's an action. You mentioned you catch glimpses of it through works of art, reading books, or spiritual practices. But the seeker is tied to something much more fundamental. And that's what I truly think. It's the human impulse to explore beyond the visible. Whether you call it spiritual or just an instinct, the seeker is woven into who we are. I think it may be what makes us human. So it's not just about finding answers, although sometimes it feels like that. I want to know what my destiny is, and people are asking these questions all the time. But there's something beyond that. It's a state of mind and a way of experiencing the world.
I really love that. I kind of wanted to bring it back to the Fool for a moment on what you were saying, because I've always seen the Fool as in the tarot as on this search to deepen their levels of consciousness. It's this embarkment of kind of the archetypes they meet as they go on. It starts off as meeting kind of the external figures, but as they go through the arcana, through the major arcana, they meet even deeper levels of consciousness. You know, they become abstract, they become much more symbolic. rather than kind of, meeting the mother energy or the father energy. It becomes much more abstract and more universal kind of consciousness. And what you were saying about that depth of the seeker is that there is this kind of, whether it's a manifestation of a real journey, a physical journey, or whether it's a manifestation of an internal journey, it deepens our levels of consciousness. It deepens our experience with the world. It's almost like you're finding parts of yourself as you go on these internal and external journeys. And the zero of the Fool, belonging everywhere and nowhere. That sense of, that ability to kind of move into the next layer, into the next level of consciousness, rather than kind of stay with your chosen number. I've always loved that about the zero. There's always that belonging, the paradox of the seeker, which is, being somewhere, but at the same time, always being somewhere else. So, yeah.
I think it's really powerful and encouraging to look at the Fool the way you described it, because I'm thinking of other people. And sometimes the advice that people get, even from tarot readers, when they have the Fool card, is not necessarily that wise. They're really worried about decisions. Am I making the right decision? Oh no, it's going to ruin me. All these fears that comes up with this archetype of the Fool. And you brought it with such an encouragement and empowerment. I'm thinking of other people who may be worrying about decisions they have to make. And when you can guide a person, giving them this support to their seeker's truth, it could be very helpful and important. So I think it's just shed the light on a very interesting paradox in this archetype and image of the Fool and the way it appears in people's lives.
I also want to say about that there is a view, very kind of like known view on major arcana as the path of initiation. And this zero arcana, it's kind of like the starting this path of initiation is actually going on the spiritual journey. Fool is a hero of spiritual journey, and his actually trust to do it. It is so important in our kind of physical, material, rational world. When you kind of like have so much information, so much rational kind of like ways, algorithm to do things, suddenly kind of just stopped paying attention to rationality of the world and look inside, look to this darkness of unknown. What is actually calling me? What it is? Can I trust this calling? Can I trust to do something, to move forward, not knowing what will be next? And this kind of bravery to do it, you like opening up to the forces of an invisible world and saying, I am ready for you. And then this journey begins through going through archetypes and kind of like up to this shadow realm and meeting death as a transformation. And if you see the last card of major arcana, world, the same figure as a Fool, as actually it's repeating, it's going to hanged man and then going to the world. Like this almost dancing, balancing on one foot figure is Fool dancing between abyss and solid rock. Hanging man, it's completely upside down, and the world, it's mastership. It's you are in the end of your journey, you are mastering these two worlds, invisible, unconscious, and conscious. It's like what Carl Jung for the way of individuation, kind of like joining these two worlds. And the seeker is actually the driving force of this journey. And I watch so many artists who are ruled by this archetype. And it's so beautiful when person literally kind of not afraid to try different things, leading just by the feeling, being led by the feeling. Is it right for me or not? Is it working for me or not? Actually, the challenge to our world, kind of like lead by kind of rational forces, and all those kind of algorithm which our education trying to push us, suddenly just stop reacting, stop being in a reaction mode to some kind of like schemes, but just go deep inside and feel. And this is scary, but this also is exciting. And I actually think that our education need to balance those two approaches, and just telling what we are trying to do now. We're just trying to tell people there is another way of knowing. There is another way of research, exploration, not only searching through Google or thinking what next degree I should take, where I should go, take psychology or cybernetics, and go through established ways, but also going to unknown, just going to unknown, not knowing. And I remember I started to write this, my play about magic, mythosphere. And I was thinking, I need a teacher, but I didn't have a teacher. So I just, it started like, I was passing through some Covent Garden fair, kind of like those stalls, and I saw crystals. And I was thinking, oh, I should try it. I should go and buy some crystals and see what I feel. And I just let my kind of feeling just to find what I need. And then when I brought them all home and I was just looking at them and feeling them, suddenly just, I had this funny idea, which then became my real idea. I was thinking, oh, I'm a witch. I can feel them. And then when you just kind of like making this kind of like leap of faith, or maybe I already know this knowledge somewhere, not outside, but inside. At this moment, magic started working. You kind of like give your imagination to the work, and it will bring you in such a places. And then what happens? Reality around you is changing. You suddenly find out that so many people interested in what you are interested. So many people can give you advice. And I'm now having some crystals in my lab, my hand, and because I always surround myself with crystals, and I just feel them like flowers of this between rocks, and they all have special energies, and maybe if I will make this just tap into it, I will find the story of each of them. And this term is tapping. It's also kind of like spiritual term, like let's tap to somewhere. This tapping is somewhere invisible, and we actually don't know if it exists or not. But we are taking this leap of faith to say, let's think that it's existing, and I can go there and just tap into this place. And it opened the door. Yeah, it sounds crazy.
No, it's not crazy at all. It's very interesting. And you've just actually answered my next question, because what you've described is how the seeker appear in your everyday life. And this is a question. How do you experience the seeker in the everyday?
Actually, there are so many ways to experience this, and it can be a person, it can be a book, it can be crystal. It has so many faces, but the main seeker, it's inside you. Actually, it's your relationship with this archetype and your response to something inside you which wants more. I remember I was talking with my niece, and we were talking which career paths to take. And I told her, my problem is that when I look inside, I'm not interested in some social career, like I want to be a professor and teaching this, or I want to be something. I have this feeling that I want to know something which is beyond our reality. And I want to have it as a knowledge, not like a dream, not only dream, because I already have it as a dream, my imagination, but I want to master it. I want to be able to communicate it whenever I want. And this is kind of like the calling from this your higher self or your unconsciousness to explore and to master, to become familiar, to know roots. And then you are just seeing what will be your next guide. And the seeker in our life is just our next guide. At some moment, my guide become amazing artist, surrealist, Leonora Carrington. She is actually, she's a British artist, which is less known artist here in Britain on the moment. It was just recently was one of her very first exhibitions. And it was so far away from London that I was thinking, oh my God, it's the first exhibition of Leonora Carrington, and they did not find a place in London to make this exhibition. But it's not what I want to say. I want to say that she was truly initiated person, and she was looking her way in a magical world, and her characters of her paintings and her writings were guiding me through my period of mythosphere. I was reading books she read. I was kind of like exploring her pictures, finding like images of this invisible world and trying to guess what it was in her picture. And I literally took 3 months of reading everything she read, everything she referenced. I was just living her life, reading memoirs about her and following her steps. And it really opened some doors for me. So like for Young in his unconscious world, he had his own wise man. And for me, I had wise woman. It was surrealist artist Leonora Carrington. And she gave a lot. And all her art has all those clues and guidance to invisible world. I just invite everyone who does not know her yet, just look at her life, look at her art. It's just kind of like an encyclopedia of this kind of like magic and invisible forces, spiritual forces.
I think it's really interesting what you're saying there, Ina, because when I was thinking about the seeker and how it appears in everyday life, there were two kind of themes that came out apart from the inner, which I totally agree. I think we are the seekers within, and it's whatever that next guide is. But I think it does manifest sometimes as almost an obsession, as something that you just feel you can't stop reading about, you can't stop listening to. And it's like you don't fully understand what at the time, but you become so obsessed and almost possessed by a topic or a theme or some kind of process. And I've seen that happen to myself so many times, where I just start becoming obsessed with something and it doesn't fully make sense until maybe years later. You're like, oh my gosh, like an obsession with tarot or astrology or, certain writings, where it's just, there's like not enough to consume. It's like, I want more books, I want more things, I want to know. And it's like you open up another chasm and you go deep in. So there's like that feeling of an obsession. But then on the opposite side as well, I sometimes experience it as a whisper. So almost just something that very gently whispers in the wind almost. You might be walking along the beach, and there's just a whisper. And then something changes in you and you think, oh, something's come in. I don't fully have its manifestation yet. And that whisper sometimes takes a long time to become a voice or a message. And so I definitely feel there's like this real paradox again of the seeker, of this sense of real obsession, of like becoming consumed, and then this kind of gentle whisper, and that just sort of taps you very gently. And if you don't listen, if you don't hear it, almost, it's like gone. So it's always these sense of these two contrasting states that appear in my life personally. Is there something I will become obsessed with that will be part of the journey? And then there will be these whispers that something is changing, and then it'll start appearing in dreams. And, one of the things I've started to do now as a daily practice is call in the seeker energy. So I start my day with a calling in of that seeker energy. And it's this curiosity, always to be curious. And I feel that as long as my soul is curious, I'm alive. For me, it's like, as long as my soul is curious, I'm alive. And it's that level of core that it kind of feels.
Yeah, about Leonora Carrington, I used to teach a class on her for 10 years. I mean, as part of the Spiritual in Art course that I was teaching. And I also recommended one of her books that she wrote to my students. It was like part of the curriculum. But I always felt that it's impossible to really engage with these topics in depth in a kind of academic environments. They have so many topics they need to go through, and there is never enough time to do it properly, to really discuss. I think we should do an episode on her one day. I mean, because it's the opportunity to talk about these amazing guides, because she and few other women that influenced me, they are guides, not just to us, but to humanity. And there is not enough discussion of that particular aspects of the work. People are discussing the formal aspects of the work, art movements, style, a little bit about the unconscious, maybe a bit of Jung, but it's usually on a surface level. And it's like the way you talked about it now. It was very alive and very mysterious, almost like one would want to know more. So this is the type of conversations that I lack in society and culture, which we're trying to bring into our. And for me, I'm making sure that every day, at least twice a day, I'm doing a practice, making contact with the seeker's realm. Although I don't call it a seeker's realm, today I'm using a form of active imagination. It's not something that I used my entire life, but recent years, because I'm teaching it as well, or it's part of my course. So I got to practice with my students. I enjoy not just teaching, but actually practicing together with the class. So this is something that immediately transcends me, sends me to a completely different realm. It's obviously my personal space. The only way I can manifest it is through my art. I mean, this is where it wants to manifest. And sometimes, obviously, there are guides there, more than one guide, depending on which room I go. What is the theme and the purpose? And sometimes it just forces me to a particular room or to a particular space and say, you'll need to look at that. And I'm looking and I'm seeing. So it's a practice as well. And I think that if we making it into a practice, discipline almost, like a spiritual, artistic discipline, then we can get more out of it. So it's also an encouragement to other people listening, not to just rely on moments of inspiration, which are great when they happen, but they're not always happen. I think it was James Hillman or Johnson who wrote about active imagination. Jung was also discussing it in a similar way, that if it doesn't happen, wait, insist, don't give up. The guide will appear at a certain point. So just wait there until you get someone or something manifesting in your inner realm, in your imaginal space. So it's an invitation as well. It could be an invitation to someone or something to appear and start conversation with you and also guiding you. And you can ask questions. Well, that's the seeker. The seeker wants answers to questions. So this is where you communicate with the guides and can get answers. And I know that from students, I'm always amazed by what happened to them when they contact their guides. I mean, it's incredible. It's so surreal. It's almost like a painting, like a surreal painting. And many of them will never use it in terms of it's not functioning for them in terms of their art. I mean, they're not artists. They're not even interested in making art, but it leads them in the direction that they need to go in mysterious ways, in a language which is not the rational language of which career shall I choose. And it's using a very different language of images and of dreams and of visions, which on the surface seem to have nothing to do with their life or physical reality, but they do. And this is where the interpreting process begins and trying to understand what was communicated. Yeah.
And I want to say about one moment which can be not like, it's not a danger, but it can be experienced like an obstacle on the way of the seeker. Those moments when you feel like you are lost and you think, oh, what is next? I have no idea what is next. I was moving, I was active, and now I have this moment like, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm completely lost. And I have lots of those moments. They are happening with regular periods of my life. And just recently, because now I'm closely working with Divine Mother Archetype, I realized that those moments of stillness and like non-action, and when you in a darkness of unknown and you think you are lost, they are actually the moments of nourishment for you. And if you attune to this darkness and this unknown, and this stillness, and will not start panic and say, oh my God, I took wrong direction. I don't know what I'm doing. It was a mistake. But just tune to this kind of like emptiness inside and feel peace with it. Just developing deep trust in your journey that you never lost. Just you need those moments of darkness, the same as people need night and day to rest and to do something and act, and use those moments for some kind of like, it's not about imagination. It's just trusting and being in an empty space, like making zero yourself. Just saying, I'm not moving anywhere. I'm just here in winter at night of my soul, just for the sake of this moment. Because it has their own seeds. They are not known to us. And maybe they will not know for some period of time, because any seed needs time to make a growing. So for those who are in collaboration with the seeker archetype, I just want to encourage people that don't afraid of those moments, because they are moments of growing. That means you come to the next level, and it's moment of death and rebirth. You need to go to another level, and this the moment when you kind of like starting again. But it's not desperation. It's good for you to start again. So I think it's just good to know about it. It can happen.
That's a very good advice, actually, because in our culture, in the Western world, being in darkness, it's not really a good thing, because what do you mean you don't know what you're doing? I mean, you're not allowed to be in the unknown. You're not allowed not to know what you're doing. I mean,
you need to move, push.
Yeah.
Go.
You need to have an aim, and you need to have a goal, and every second you just need to be doing something useful and practical. So this is very frightening for people to be in this space of not knowing. And this is where, you need to hear that voice that you just voiced of.
Not to be afraid of silence and darkness.
Yeah.
Just allow yourself to be to all this, just owning it this moment. Okay, I'm in dark place, I'm in silence, but I trust that I'm safe. That soon I will know what to do next.
Yeah.
It will happen. It's just trusting this cycling nature of humanity. We're always fighting winter moods. We're always fighting darkness in ourselves. We keep kind of like taking stimulates inside to keep us moving, but we are exhausting our natural forces. We are just exhausting, like we're exhausting Mother Nature, like we're exhausting our planet, exhausting resources, just taking. No, there are moments when we need to let go of our activities and just rest and be in empty space, not knowing, just trusting that moment will come, we will be replenished, and we will be ready for the next step. And this trust, very important.
I was going to say, Ina, it's really resonant and so powerful what you're saying about sitting in the darkness and sitting with winter, sitting within kind of the fact that we do go through seasons in life. And, very recently, I experienced, a profound grief. And my father passed away in September. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to stay with the pain and to sit in the darkness and to be with the silence, and to not feel like I needed to push through it and get over it, like this kind of, just keep on keeping on, which is this kind of modern way of thinking. I was really blessed to be able to really go somewhere deep with my grief. I was invited on a desert vision quest. And that desert vision quest is, I wanted to know how far into myself, so this inner seeking, how far into myself I was going to find that pain and find that grief. And so the experience was all to do with being in silence and also fasting, and also being out on a dune without a tent and just sleeping with the natural world. It was here in the empty quarter, just on the borders with Saudi Arabia. And it was just this feeling, exactly what you were saying, of trust, that it felt very dark, and it felt that the darkness itself needed to be experienced. And in those moments before I went into the desert and before I experienced the quest, I was lost. It was before that I was lost, because I couldn't get to the grief. I couldn't get to the pain because of the stimulants and the life and over consuming, like you were saying. We kind of mask it with things, don't we? But when you're empty, when you're physically empty, but you're also a vessel almost, allowing for whatever needs to come in. And that's when I experienced the darkness on a cellular level. It was beyond the bone. It was beyond the bone. It went to the cells. It went to the cellular change that's going on. And we miss this. We miss these changes if we are always in the light, if we are always in summer. If we're always experiencing summer and spring, then we miss out on the gifts of the autumn, which is this shedding, this letting go, this death, for there to be the winter, which is where everything is underground, everything is in the dark, and more life is brought from the darkness. Life is created in darkness. And, when we realize this, it's like melancholy to me. If I'm feeling a day of melancholy, I'm feeling melancholy. I'm not going to change that. I'm just going to live with my melancholy. And, we don't always need to be in summer. And I think that experience for me last year was a life-changing experience, because it, exactly what you were saying, it was realizing you can trust the darkness. You can trust the dark night of the soul, your dark hours. They're part of our experience of the rebirthing and our transformation. And that's a deep inner seeking, if you like. Yeah.
Due to climate change in various parts of the world, the transition between one season to the next is blurring. Spring doesn't feel exactly like spring, and the autumn may not exist at all. Discussed it various occasions with people. How do you feel about the spring, or how do you feel about the autumn? Do you think it was always like that? And I'm asking these questions, and I'm not getting answers, because people seem to not notice so much, I guess, that something is changing in terms of the climate. Just saying that how important it is to experience those different seasons. And I just must share my experience of the desert as well, because the way you described it was so evocative. And for me, the seeker always brings to mind the image of the desert. And the desert for me is the ultimate setting for a spiritual quest. It's vast, empty, and demanding. I'm sure you felt it. It's full of mystery, but it's tough. And I actually made a film about this, a screen dance quest for wholeness set in the desert. And it was deeply challenging, almost like a real life initiation, and filming in the harsh desert environment tested me, and I think it tested every member of the crew. And I felt that the desert became part of the journey, and it sort of was revealing to us its own wisdom. And so the film has become, talking in kind of still present tense because I'm still working on it. It seems like a never-ending project. I have released part of it in the past, but I realized that the film has its own timing and it's waiting for the right moment to fully emerge. That in itself feels like part of the seeker's journey for me. And also knowing this is something that I really had to learn the hard way. Knowing when to push forward and when to wait. I mean, that was a real lesson for me. I mean, because I made many mistakes, pushing, when I actually needed to wait and let things happen. And also at the heart of the desert, there's always the idea of an oasis. And the seeker is someone who's wandering through the heat and emptiness, longing for water. And I actually worked with the dancer, a young man who portrayed the seeker through various episodes in the desert. But the journey itself, like I said, it's an initiation and it's pushing the seeker through different challenges. But what they are seeking is what drives them. It's their own desire. So the oasis, in a sense, it's not just about the water, it's the manifestation of the heart's longings. So the seeker is not just searching, it's about being transformed by the quest itself. And obviously the desert is so mysterious, so it doesn't really hold all the answers. It prepares the seekers to receive it in their own way. And what I felt very strongly, and I don't know whether you felt it as well, I mean, I would be curious to know about the experience, MaryRita, your experience. I mean, have you felt anything different about the way you experience time in the desert? Because what has happened to me is that I had this conversation with a Bedouin man, and we were talking about time, and he was talking about how in the desert, the rhythms are very, very slow. And I told him as well that, I felt it, that the rhythms are very different. And when you step into the desert with this intention, it is almost like stepping into a different world, a completely different universe. It's so different than anything that you left behind. And then I was questioning about the way I should deal with the images. Should they move very slowly? Because they should be moving slowly. But it's so much against the grain these days to create something that moves slowly, because most of the images move very, very quickly these days on screen. People can't stand anything that lasts more than 30 seconds. So... No, I'm just, exaggerating, but it's more or less the situation in terms of images. There's a very big difference between the pace of the rhythms of films that were made, for example, in the 80s or 90s to today's films, which are very fast-paced. I'm just adding this in a way to also maybe reflect on the seeker, because recently David Lynch passed, and I started watching Twin Peaks again. And what I found amazing, loved it. I mean, what I find amazing is the pace. If you watch the episode, they're so slow. Everything moves so slowly, and every detail is observed. All the strange things are being highlighted. But the pace, I mean, you can't find any film these days with this slow rhythm. And so, yeah, that was my experience of the desert and time and rhythm and the quest.
That's amazing.
It was interesting. David Lynch, like you were saying, is like, really someone that played with the idea of time. I always used to think about the Black Lodge and this idea of liminal space in Twin Peaks. There was always another time happening and unfolding at the same time as kind of the small village. There's always this other temporal time going on behind the red curtain, so it's that sense. And in a way, that's the desert, isn't it? It's like when you go behind the red curtain, you go into the desert, you do experience things differently. Because it's that sense of it, it's confronting. It's incredibly confronting because there's nowhere to hide. That's the first thing I feel when I go into the desert, is you are confronted. It's almost like an abyss. And it's that sense of you stare out onto the desert and it just looks straight back at you. And you feel and see every part of yourself because you're exposed. And it makes me think of the Fool in tarot again. When he starts off on his quest, he's got his colourful tunic, he's got his knapsack and his hat. But when he's the Fool in the world, he's naked. He's completely shed all of these materials, all of these clothes. And that's how I felt in the desert. I felt very naked. I felt very exposed, but at the same time being held by the desert as well. But it wasn't kind.
No.
The first evening there were these mistrals, these winds that just swept up from nowhere. And when you're sleeping outdoors and you don't have a tent, you're just completely in these winds. And, there was one of these moments of the desert's rhythm also doesn't follow, what we would say like a linear time. Things can just burst out of nowhere. Like these mistrals came out of nowhere. It was still. And then they rose. And then at the same time, it went back to like pure stillness as well. And it's that stillness, that complete stillness that is transformative. Because when something stops moving, you also stop moving and you start to, almost the oneness comes in, the transpersonal comes in there, the interconnectedness of like, oh, well, I am the desert and the desert is me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just you described it so well, the stillness of the desert and the rhythm. But this is, we're talking about it, but actually experiencing it, it's something else. And it's not, it depends, of course, where you go. But if you're in the harsh desert, it wasn't necessarily kind. There were moments of, great beauty, or when I was in the Oasis, it was kind of more gentle. But overall, it's tough. There were moments where I felt that, I just can't continue. I just need to disappear. I can't stand it anymore. And I am very happy that I already did it in a way, because I don't think that I can go through another production like that. I mean, physically, it was so demanding. I mean, you need to be very strong, physically strong, and mentally.
Yeah, that's an interesting moment about being strong and developing the strengths in this absolutely spiritual landscape. Yes, and the nature actually, it is a unique way for people physically experience this spirituality, not in a kind of inner journey, not in a meditation, not in active imagination, but physically just coming to the wilderness and opening to it and feeling those energy and feeling this, how tiny you are, how vast the world around you, and all those forces, energies, and you are being able to stay and survive and not to be physically lost.
Yeah.
All this kind of so raw and so kind of like real, and this actually nature, all our what is given us here on this planet, it's a rich playground and exploration field And I really think that to have this journey, a seeker's journey, it's not only in imagination or in exploration or spiritual practices. It's just going to this for the trip to wilderness and experience the forces of nature, to making this encounter with nature, like really meeting it, not kind of being protected by comfort of hotels and agencies.
Yeah.
But just going out there and feeling naked. Yeah, that's very beautiful image, MaryRita, you were mentioning that you're feeling naked. Yes, that's like we're taking layers of protection or distraction, actually. In reality, it's not protection, it's just distraction, ignoring what is real. And real is there, out, in nature.
But when I say that it's initiation, I meant that, you don't know how it's going to affect you or the people who came with you on the journey. And that's what I noticed during this production. It was a small crew and it was very basic, but I mean, it was testing because, people's nature, whether it's the shadow or where it's the kind signs manifest, and that was very difficult to contain. And luckily, we had this shoot. We had to do the production, so it kept the structure going. But regardless, so it was good to have that structure, because without it, it would be insane.
Yeah.
And this is where I was thinking, when I was thinking about our archetype of the seeker, I was also thinking about the dark side and or the shadow, because the seeker, okay, it's a lovely idea, but at the same time, there is a dangerous aspect to it. I think there is a shadow side to it. Would you like to say something about it?
Because I am now on a journey making friends with shadow. Yeah, I just told about darkness, about experiencing darkness, and I agree with you that we need structure. We need something to come back. We are living, and we need to something stable and kind of rational to come back. But at the same time, with developing this trust and maturity on this journey, we can already take longer leaps in a chaos or in wilderness. But we need to develop strengths as well. And this kind of like strengths in balancing masculine and feminine forces, and being kind of able to use both sides of our psyche. And we are definitely, because we are humans, we're created to survive. All our instincts, all our genes, our mechanism, hormones, they are helping us to survive, bringing fear, bringing kind of cortisol, kind of like this survival modes when we ready to act, ready to do something, ready to be strong. And unfortunately, our civilization we are living in now, they're exploiting those forces very much in us, kind of like our fear to be a loser, our fear to, and we kind of like stuck a bit in this masculine mode of doing, panicking that we will be losing train, kind of like. That's why my attraction to shadow and stillness is so strong, just to balance what we have now in society. But definitely, when you are in wilderness, you need to have both those energies of yours. Otherwise, you will just will disappear. And for nature, it's nothing. You are just tiny spark of life in a circle of endless circles of life. But you as a person, you need kind of like, if you're on a journey, you need to be strong.
Yeah.
That's why kind of like we can explore shadow, but we also should kind of like be able develop this inner strength to master this, to be masterful in this journey, not to be lost in this journey. Just to come back to rational, to come back to ground ourselves, and that's what I want to say.
Well, the shadow also reminds me the tarot card of the Hermit and the archetype of the Hermit, which, well, for me, it was always associated with the seeker. But when the Hermit is turned upside down, then the Hermit is lost in the darkness and it's looking in the wrong direction. And the danger is that when someone is deep in the shadow side of seeking, they often aren't consciously aware of the damage that they cause to themselves and to the people around them. So they might believe that they are still searching for truth, but they are actually trapped in a cycle that disconnects them from from themselves and from the world around them. And I encountered people like that. It was extremely serious. I mean, I think we'll leave it to another time to discuss how extreme this could be. So seeking can be a powerful path, but also a dangerous one if it's not balanced. So we need to keep a sense of integration, but this is very easy said than done, because bringing the inner world in harmony with the external world, it's not always that easy. So there is that risk that the seeker may get lost in the very quest they set out on. It's like there is that aspect as well.
Yeah, I really wanted to sort of echo what you were saying about this dance, this masculine and feminine dance, and also the dance with the shadow. But it's when one becomes dominant, when one becomes overpowering, that it feels that that's where, the balance is lost. And that the hermit element of, when you go deep into the inner seeking world, where the hermit is in solitude, isn't he? He takes himself away from society. He lives on a hill, but he's cut himself off from community. He's cut himself off. So that inner exploration has become, can become a dark side, and you become cut off from other people, or like you said, the damage it can cause to yourself and to others. And I feel like another manifestation of like the shadow seeker is distraction, where it's not like a magpie, where a magpie sees a shiny thing. And then as soon as it has that shiny thing, it's looking for the next shiny thing. So the seeking energy, when it's kind of operating on this much more surface level, when it hasn't embedded or integrated into a deeper exploration, can be dangerous. It's just, what is my next hit? What is the next thing that I can kind of take without an integration. Just the actual dopamine of the experience, you know, of like the high, that I want that high, and that high needs to be higher next time. And this can be like an erosion of the seeker. To me, is that sense of that there's never a sense of integration or fulfillment in the quest. It's just needing that next nugget, almost like a drug.
Yeah, it's addiction, I feel.
Yeah.
But it's consequences, again, I'm saying, of over consequence of excess of masculine energy. This action. What is next? Because when you allow yourself to become passive, if you allow yourself to be in a stillness, to be in the trust of this dark unknown, and just waiting what is coming next to your soul, and kind of making your choice not from this crazy movement from one shiny thing to another shiny thing, but growing inside you, kind of letting this. I just, you know, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to take stigma out of shadow and darkness, because what we have as a shadow side of the seeker, it's again very masculine archetype, very active. But when we look in what is in between, this is a moment of when you're making your cycle and coming to this empty space where you don't know where to go, you allow yourself to stay there, to have this winter period, so then your next move will grow naturally. So for me, it's not the danger of archetype itself, it's a danger of our excess of action, desire to move constantly. That's why we can be carried away and trapped in opposite kind of like direction, making wrong choices, because we're exhausting our soul, and it's become kind of like it's just being in pain and traumatized. I think dangerous and kind of like evil people, they're just very traumatized people who need time for healing. And of what is feminine energy allowing us? It's allowing us this time for healing and integrating and making wise choice. So here I believe all the arcana's journey, if we look at this, going from one major arcana to another, it has this descent down to the shadow and then coming back to light. But it is not dangerous. It's necessary. It is necessary for the soul to go to this place and develop new, transform yourself, actually. It's an alchemy of this journey.
Okay, so I think we'll end with the idea of alchemy.
Yes, that's good.
And as we wrap up this episode of Transpersonal Arts, Passionate Explorations Beyond the Ordinary, we leave you with the understanding that the seeker is not just an archetype. It is a living presence within us, guiding our quest for meaning, transformation, and deeper connection. Our conversation today has only scratched the surface, reminding us that seeking is an ongoing process, one that unfolds in ways we cannot always predict. Whether through art, spirituality, or personal experience, the journey of the seeker continues, shaping the way we engage with ourselves and the world around us. Thank you for listening, and please don't forget to subscribe.
Subscribe to the Transpersonal Arts Podcast.